Welcome to Nebraska Farmcast, a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I'm Ryan Evans. Two current drivers of the fed cattle market are domestic red meat demand and corn prices. With December pre-plant corn prices hovering around 70 cents per bushel higher than the 5 previous December corn contracts, that means higher feed costs for feedlots. And even with red meat prices rising at the grocery store, consumer demand continues to be strong, creating incentives to continue placing cattle, even amid concerns about packing plant capacity. Elliott Dennis, Assistant Professor of Livestock Marketing and Risk Management in the Department of Agricultural Economics at UNL, joins me now to discuss heavier feeder cattle placements and meat processing plant issues. Hi, Elliott.
Hi, Ryan.
Thanks for being here again. Can you start off by explaining more about the current market situation, including what's happening with these feed costs and meat demand?
Yeah, so really, as you explained, we're experiencing pretty high corn prices right now. Pre-planting, we're about $4.50 a bushel, and right now the December corn contract was about $5.30. Obviously, that's going to change as we start to see what actual harvest is and how well the crop actually performs throughout the growing year. I think it's still up in the air if those prices are going to come down. We'd have to have a pretty good yield for them to come down into where we thought they were going to be in the mid $3 range to low $4 range. So we're still expected to see pretty high corn prices. Well, ultimately, that means cost of gain or the cost of feed for feedlots will go up. To give you an example of where that cost of feed is, right now it's about $105 per hundredweight. This comes from the Focus on Feedlot report out of Kansas State. Historically, in 2020, we are at about $80 per hundredweight, and over the last 5 years, from 2015 to 2019, we're about $79 per hundredweight. So significantly higher, just primarily due to corn prices. There is some soybean issues as well, but primarily corn. But even with these higher cost of feed prices, a lot of producers are continuing to place cattle, and that largely can be seen from the prices that we observe on the CME board right now. Right now, the October contract was trading at about 122 per hundredweight. But when we look into the future, that really tells us how much carry there is in the market or how much desire is there to keep placing animals. And that April 2022 contract was trading at about 136 per hundredweight. So significant demand forecast in the future. And so even though we have higher corn prices, definitely continue to see higher places moving forward.
As far as consumer demand goes, too, you've written that that's largely been unaffected and typically unaffected, even in the face of higher prices at the grocery store, right?
Yeah, so that's one thing we were actually really concerned about as we started to go into this second wave of the Delta variant of COVID was, first, what were the restrictions going to be and how consumer demand is going to be held up. Remarkably, even with higher beef prices at retail and at food service, we've seen consumers continue to spend money, and demand as a percentage of has really not changed very much. What we have seen is actually a strong export demand, and we're actually at record export demand numbers right now. And so that's what's driving a lot of these higher prices right now is primarily the export demand.
When it comes to placements and marketing in the U.S., what did September's Cattle on Feed report indicate?
Yeah, so with higher corn prices, there is a shift for feedlots in the weight of cattle they prefer to place. When feedlots have higher corn prices, generally they want to place heavier cattle, and they kind of shy away from placing lighter cattle, and that's exactly what we saw. We saw a huge amount of increase in heavier cattle, particularly in those cattle that are weighing 800 and 900 pounds or more. And Nebraska was one of the largest contributors to that. For example, when we're talking about total number of placements, Nebraska places about about 45% of all the animals that weigh over 900 pounds are placed in Nebraska. Even if we go down a little bit lower to the 800 to 900 pound range, Nebraska is still placing about 35% of all of those cattle. And really what we see is that there's this kind of segregation happening in the market. You have the Texahoma region really specializing in calf-fed cattle, so really anything less than 700 pounds, and shying away from heavier cattle. Kansas kind of plays in the middle. They prefer kind of hitting that sweet spot anywhere between, that 700 to 800 pound animal is really what they prefer. And then we have Nebraska, which really wants to place heavy cattle. And really, when we saw these higher increases, it was Nebraska leading the way.
And can you expand more on what types of trends we're seeing in Nebraska?
Yeah, so as mentioned, the cattle and feed report showed that Nebraska was placing about 45% of all the heavy cattle that were 900 pounds or more. This is part of a larger trend that has really been happening since 2008 and really kind of deliberate in the later months. In the article that I published, you can really actually see this by month and these increases that have happened over time. When I look at all of these placements by month, we see is that most of these placements are happening in really, really heavy weights. So, for example, in September, over 40% of all placements in Nebraska in September are over 800 pounds. And that's consistent pretty much through June through December. So large Nebraska has really shifted away from placing lighter cattle and really has found a market in feeding heavier cattle. And there's some reasons for that because, Texas is going to feed, can place 600 pound cattle and they're going to harvest them at 1,200 pounds, whereas Nebraska is generally going to place them around 800, 900 pounds, but we're going to feed them out to 1,500, 1,600 pounds. And with that comes some benefits of higher grading of choice and prime product.
All right, that's Elliott Dennis, Assistant Professor of Livestock Marketing and Risk Management in the Department of Agricultural Economics here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And you can find an article where he analyzes what we've been talking about here on this episode on our website for the Center for Agricultural Profitability at cap.unl.edu. Thanks for your time, Elliott.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Nebraska Farmcast is a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. For the latest research-based information and education resources to manage your farm or ranch operation, visit our website at cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu.